right, let's see if this is everything should be working. Just gonna test and see if it's looking good. Oh yeah, we're firing on all cylinders. Everything is good. All right, cool. What's up, everybody? Hope you're having a good night. We got a big old moon out there. You can go outside and check it out right now. Maybe you're outside walking around looking at it. Tonight is gonna be just kind of looking at the chart for the night, seeing what's going on, and then maybe talking some current events bull crap that's going on. Lots going on in the world. But let's try and switch over to the there we go. Hold on. Where'd my pen go? All right, sweet. We're rocking and rolling. All right, so yeah, so here we are. We got the full moon in Taurus, opposite the sun in Scorpio. Lot going on with the Taurus moon. Taurus full moon is pretty great as far as full moons go. You know, the full moon is associated with lunacy, lunatic behavior, all things Luna. But Taurus is great for the moon for a lot of reasons because, well, Taurus is the moon's exaltation. But why? The moon is the fastest moving heavenly body, right? Everyone thinks, oh, Mercury is speedy. But really, the moon is Thoth, right? When you think of Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, right? The messenger of the gods. That's kind of an amalgamation of Mercury and the moon. The moon is by far the fastest moving body in the sky. It goes at about a clip of 13 degrees per day. 28 days to go around the whole zodiac. And that's why the moon, as far as the houses go, the moon is most comfortable in the third house, which is the house of short journeys. The third house is where the moon rejoices, essentially. That's the third house is even known as the temple of the moon because the moon does make those short journeys. And it makes sense given the associations with the moon, right? Like the moon is our emotions typically. Like when you look at somebody's chart, pretty much two things make up the mind, the mental state, and that is the moon and Mercury. And together, those are both, yet that's the fastest luminary and the fastest planet. So, and again, your mind is very, very quick compared to the rest of your body, the rest of your being. So the moon and Mercury, together become Thoth, Hermes, Trismegistus. Hermes by himself typically is like Mercury, but Thoth is really more of a moon god, actually. So, yeah, we got a full moon in Taurus, and what Taurus does for the moon, right? Taurus is very steady. It's an earth sign, so it has a very stabilizing effect on the moon. The bull is very hard to move, whereas if you think about the moon and your emotions, right? It's very quick because what can change quicker than anything? What's very fickle, right? Your emotional state. So Taurus has a steadying effect on the moon, no planet exalts in a sign they rule except for allegedly Mercury. And Mercury is alleged to exalt in Virgo, but I personally am not sold that Mercury exalts in Virgo. I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming that Mercury is really happy everywhere. Is Virgo great for Mercury? Yeah. But is it specifically an exaltation, That's for another stream though. But anyway, so we got this full moon in Taurus that gives this nice stabilizing effect, right? Taurus brings out a lot of beauty. That's why people who are ruled by Taurus tend to be quite beautiful. And of course, Taurus is ruled by Venus. So Taurus brings out a lot of beauty in the moon and your emotions. Shakespeare is alleged to have a Taurus moon. He has a lot of Taurus. So, like if you look at Shakespeare's chart, if it's legit, there is so much Taurus in Shakespeare's chart. And Shakespeare, he was flowery with his words, right? Beautiful, poetic words. Very grounded in his time, but his words were extremely poetic, extremely flowery. And a lot of that had to do with the strong influence of Taurus in his chart. Taurus can really ground you. It can slow things down. Um, so yeah, we've got the full moon there. So the full moon does bring out lunacy, but that Taurian nature really, really stabilizes. And I don't know how your guys' day went. Hope you had a great day. Hope you're having a great day. Yo, what's up, happy, happy, happy? How's things going, bro? So yeah, as far as full moons go, Taurus is genuinely a great one in my opinion. Obviously you can go outside and look at it. This is alleged to be the biggest full moon of 2025. You go outside, we got a beautiful full moon to look at tonight. And it's definitely a bigger full moon. That's what's pretty cool, right? And this is kind of like just an intuitive astrology thing. So when the sun is in the winter signs, the full moons are the biggest and brightest in the sky by far. Like when the sun's in Capricorn, right? That's when the full moon's in Cancer. So that is as far to the north as the full moon's going to be. So during these winter months, you'll see some beautiful big full moons because of that relationship between the opposition of the sun and the moon. So it's just naturally how it is. It's very, very cool. So we got this full moon in Taurus. Of course, there's some bull crap to deal with that. Taurus is, with the moon that can definitely be there. Some other big aspects we have going on. We've got our nice grand trine between Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars, which has been going on for the last little bit. That grand trine is somewhat over because Mars has now entered Sagittarius. So Cancer and Pisces trine, right? And they're just kind of lightly trining Mars and Sag. Mars entered Sagittarius. It was either today or yesterday. Left Scorpio, entered Sag. So it was super, super recent. So we had a really strong water trine with every single one. What's interesting about this trine, right, is Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars are the three planets that are above the sun, right? So you've got the moon, then you got Mercury, and then you've got, Venus, and then the sun in the middle is the fourth one. And then above that, you've got Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn as the last planet, or as the furthest planet out. So all of the super solar, if you want to call them that, planets had a grand trine over the past week and a half to week. And that is extremely powerful, seeing that grand water trine play out that has now kind of run its course with Mars entering Sag. So that activated a lot. Like if you had any deep water in your chart, like late degrees of Scorpio, late degrees of Cancer, or late degrees of Pisces in your chart, you definitely felt that trine transit your nativity in some way. Because if you have, late degrees of Pisces, well, then Saturn is conjoining whatever's in there in your chart. Mars was trining it, and Jupiter was trining it at the same time. And the same is true for Scorpio and Cancer if you had those late degrees. And that is a good way to kind of get to know how to read a chart, right? Like people talk about transitions and nativities all the time. Well, what that really means is when like a planet is going through the zodiac, okay, well, what in your chart is in there, and how is that planet that's transiting, moving by your chart affecting it? Conjunctions are by far like the easiest and strongest way to see how current astrology is affecting a nativity is just looking at how those conjunctions are passing by, right? So if you have anything in late Pisces right now, Saturn is just grinding back and forth. Saturn's almost done retrogressing here in a little bit, because Saturn entered Aries. What was it, like a few months ago now? Quite a while ago, and then hit into like 3 degrees of Aries or so, and then now has retrogressed back into these latter degrees of Pisces, and soon Saturn is going to start moving back into Aries. So that's what's going on with Saturn. Um, and we have almost a kite, right? We don't have quite a direct kite with this chart, but Saturn and Jupiter are sextiling the moon, both of them. So, that's interesting how both of those planets work, and you can kind of see just by the sigils the nature of Saturn and Jupiter, right? Because they're both about expansion and contraction. So Jupiter is the semicircle over the cross, and Saturn is the cross over the semicircle. So Saturn's glyph, that you see there on the right, that symbolizes constriction, right? That's the circle is spirit. That's why the sun is a circle and the moon is symbolized as a semicircle, because they're both about spirit. Now Jupiter is the expansion of spirit over matter, which is symbolized by a cross. And then Saturn is matter, right? The material world, and the constriction of spirit, right? Saturn is Kronos. Kronos is said to eat all his children. Why? Because over time, everyone, yo, what's up, Spice Bear? Over time, all material succumbs to the will of Saturn. So that's why Kronos quite literally eats his children. And my humble opinion, if we let's see. Oh, it's not moving. Saturn is the southernmost planet, right? And the south, in my opinion, is associated with hell, and that's why Antarctica is frozen over. That's why hell is frozen over, because it's away from the center. And if you think about Antarctica over the past like year or so, there was a lot of deception in Antarctica. That's why next to Rothschild Island in Antarctica is Deception Island, because the further south you go, the further away from God, the north, the throne you are. And life freezes there. So really, I mean, Antarctica typifies Saturnian restriction. So cold, no life growing, a constant state of frozen inferno. And that's why in Spanish, to say winter is inverno, and in Italian, it's invierno. And that's why hell is frozen over, because the farther you go, there we go. The farther you go outward, the more frozen over everything is, right? If you stay close to the center, close to the throne, close to God, that's all that right there. That's why inside the circles of the tropics that the sun travels, right, it can stay very warm. But then you go towards that outer edge and you lose that warmth, and Saturn or Satan reigns. And again, this is like a random tangent, sorry guys, but like that's why, like look at what happens south of the Tropic of Capricorn. You got some crazy place like Australia, bro. Like what kind of animals, like absolute freaks of nature that are out to kill you, live in Australia? South America, deep South Africa, right? It's deep sub-Saharan. That's where like a lot of horrible shit goes on with both animals and if I may be so bold, human behavior becomes quite erratic if you go really far south of the Tropic of Capricorn, because, again, in my opinion, you're leaving the center of Earth, the throne, and heading outward, towards Saturn. So, yeah, random tangent from there. But back to the chart. We've got a full moon in Taurus. We've got Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn is not happy in Pisces. Saturn, what's weird, and this is what's tough about Saturn, right? Saturn falls in Aries. Saturn exalts in Libra and falls in Aries. So Saturn, a few months ago went into Aries, fell, and then retrogressed back into Pisces, and now is going to start progressing back again into Aries. So Saturn is having a rough time. And again, like what kind of stuff has been happening in the world over the past few months? Like, yeah, we've had a rough while, but tensions are flaring. And speaking of Taurus, right? So Taurus is associated with earthly things. It's the first earth sign, it's the fixed earth sign. That's why Taurus has associations with beauty, because, well, the creatures of earth can be quite beautiful. And Taurus especially is associated with food, right? It's got the cow. If you describe someone as a cow, it's, it can be beautiful. Yeah, dude, Harriet Bowie, Saturn is sloppy in Pisces. Sloppy is a great Piscean word. It's got that, splish splash sound, the sloppiness that is very much associated with Pisces. That's great, dude. And Saturn being a very earthy sign, not quite like the moon, is definitely not happy in Pisces. But the moon is associated with, like, food. Taurians tend to, eat a lot, right? Longo likes to point out that Taurians, there's a lot of fat, famous Taurians like Lizzo and so on. So, right, we have a full moon in Taurus. You might get quite the appetite. You might be in the mood for food. And recently, what's happened? We've had EBT cut off. So we have a lot of drama around food when we have this full moon in Taurus. So, there's a lot of people who are obviously very upset at EBT being cut off, and that happened, I don't think uncoincidentally, right when this full moon in Taurus is happening, because it's just like you'll be in the mood for the pleasures, the earthly pleasures, that may be the mood, because the moon is the mood. We get the word mood from moon. You know, Taurus is definitely a fertile sign. It's not as sexual as Scorpio, but Scorpio and Taurus are opposites. So all of these opposite signs, they do have, it's like two sides of the same coin. So if Scorpio is sexual and sensual, so is Taurus, but in a different way. Scorpio is that, dark, mysterious, allure of sexuality, where Taurus is just like, the fertility, the fecundity, which is why, what does Taurus do? Taurus sextiles Cancer. And the sextiles teach you a lot. The domiciles teach you so much, right? Taurus, the moon exalts in Taurus, and the sun exalts in Aries, right? So those two exaltations, the moon and the sun, well, that's a conjunction. They conjugate. The moon and the sun, their conjugation that they do every month when they produce a new moon is very, very significant. And then if you look at the exaltations of Venus and Mars, right? So Mars exalts in Capricorn and Venus exalts in Pisces. Well, Pisces to Capricorn, that's a sextile. So those exaltations, teach you, okay, well, there's a strong connection of the sextile between Venus and Mars. We get the word sex from sextile, 60 degrees. Well, Aries and the moon, those two signs are next to each other. You know, that's a slapping together. That's two things coming together and doing something very significant, you know, Taurus and Aries. And of course, you know, Aries is the first sign. So the sun exalting there makes complete sense. And then, okay, the sun exalts. Well, then the very next sign, you know, the moon has to kick on basically and exalt. And the exaltation makes sense for so many reasons. Jupiter in Cancer, you know, right now he is in his exaltation. Jupiter is doing some great things. Expanding tribalism. I think Jupiter, if he's not retrogressing now, he's about to, because the way Jupiter's movement through the signs work is, you know, Jupiter enters Cancer, he goes direct for 4 months, chills for a second, retrogresses for 4 months, and then he's back out into Leo 4 months later. And that's why Jupiter takes about a year to go through each sign, because it's literally 4 months forward, 4 months backward, 4 months forward, on to the next one. And it goes on ad infinitum like that for Jupiter. Jupiter is squaring Venus right now, which is rough, right? You might see, you know, that's like a snapping of love. I like to think of a square aspect, right? An opposition are two things in direct, you know, opposition, and that's that could be natural, right? Like the sun and Saturn, right? Like the domicile of the sun is Leo, and Saturn rules Aquarius, and the Saturn and the sun are natural opposites, and Cancer and Capricorn are also opposites. So that's like the sun and the moon being opposite Saturn. That can be natural. It's like opposition. I don't know. There's a lot of debate among astrologers, you know, going back millennia. You know, this is not like some settled debate like which aspect is worse, the square or the opposition. I think it depends on the planet, but I think squares can be nasty. That's like quick, sudden violence. That's more of a Mars Marshall thing, right? So Jupiter squaring Venus is the worst aspect in the sky today, in my humble opinion. Um, you know, even, and that's what kind of sucks, right? Like Jupiter is in his exaltation in Cancer, and Venus is in her domicile in Libra, but Venus is now being impeded by Jupiter. So that is a restriction of a few different things, right? You know, Venus is associated with, you know, beauty. So if we're looking at this full moon in Taurus, right? So Taurus is ruled by Venus. So even though Venus isn't in Taurus right now, the condition of Venus in the sky will affect the condition of the heavenly bodies that are in Taurus right now too. So Venus being impeded by Jupiter is affecting this full moon in Taurus. So there might be a snapping of things associated with Venus because Venus is being squared by Jupiter, right? So Jupiter is the expansion over matter, and Venus is the spirit over matter. You know, they're both very, very similar, and that's why both benefics have their either circle or semicircle glyph above the cross, because the cross symbolizes matter, the circle is spirit. So, you know, that's the greater benefic squaring the lesser benefic. That could manifest in so many different ways. Most negative, you know, there aren't too many positive aspects to a square, you know, in my opinion. You know, God does everything for a reason, you know. So, you know, things can hurt for a reason. But yeah, you know, Venus in Libra, it's not quite the sensual earthiness of Venus in Taurus, right? Venus in Libra is the whimsical, lovely nature, the fair, you know, but fickle nature of Venus in Libra. And then we have the sun being in Scorpio, you know, in not the sun, it doesn't fall in Scorpio, the moon falls in Scorpio. And that's really interesting for the moon, that the moon exalts opposite her fall. Same for the sun, right? The moon or the sun exalts in Aries and falls in Libra. Um, and that's pretty much true for every planet. You know, like the Venus exalts in Pisces, falls in Virgo. You know, Jupiter exalts in Cancer, falls in Capricorn. So yeah, the exaltation's opposite the fall. So this full moon, right? You got the sun opposite the moon. That's how a full moon is produced. And the sun in Scorpio, there's so much to it. Life, death, and rebirth, regeneration. Um, we get beautiful sunsets in Scorpio for sure. But yeah, a lot going on with the chart too. We got the Mercury and Sagittarius. Mercury and Sagittarius is impetuous. If your Mercury is in Sagittarius, it is by far, in my opinion, the most prone to interrupting. People that I know with Mercury and Sag, it's an impetuous nature, right? And that is very Jupiterian. It's very swift. Sagittarius rules. Think of Mercury and Sagittarius like lightning. Like a lightning strike, very quick, very sudden, swift communication with Mercury and Sag. So I think Mercury and Sag is great. It's very forthright and honest communication because again, Jupiter rules it. So Mercury and Sag tend not to be liars at all. Mercury, is probably the planet most associated with lying and duplicity. It does rule Gemini, after all, and I can say that being a Gemini. So Mercury and Sag, you have quick, impetuous, all over the place communication, which I'm going to use as my excuse for why I'm bouncing all over the place with this chart. But, I'm just kind of going as things cross my mind. So we've got Mercury and Sag. Mercury is conjunct Mars. So, whenever you have a Mars aspect, be careful, be careful with what you say. You may harm yourself or others quickly with your words. Thinking back to yesterday, I made a quip to somebody, and I try and really guard what I say. And I made a quip to somebody that I had to apologize for because, I realized, oh man, I said that a little bit harshly, a little bit more harshly than I otherwise might have. And, that's the suddenness, in my opinion, of like a Mars Mercury conjunction, harsh quips, letting your tongue lash out quickly is indicative of Mars and Mercury, especially in Sagittarius. So be mindful with what you're saying, everybody. Mercury is that communication, and Mars rules suddenness. Like when it comes to malefics and foul deeds, right? Saturn is very slow. Mars is the swifter of the two malefics. So that's, Mars rules murder. And that's why Mars is a nocturnal planet, because the most evil stuff that happens with murder and robbery are all Mars ruled things. And that stuff happens at nighttime typically. Where Saturn is a diurnal planet, meaning it's happiest during the daytime. And that's interesting because Saturn likes moving unseen. Saturn rules meditation and also pre-meditation, right? So if you're plotting something evil, that is Saturnian. Whereas if you're acting impulsively, well, that's Mars, that's rash, that's brash. So Mars and Sag, I mean, that's two very quick fiery things, Sag being a fire sign, Mars being the fiery red planet. That can be some impulsive bad decisions, especially aspected by Mercury. Mercury is entirely androgynous. Mercury is neither male nor female, benefic nor malefic. So Mercury in a nativity, and also, right now I'm kind of talking mundane astrology. Mundane astrology is just the chart of the moment and, how that may affect the overall, goings on of the world. Some people think that certain signs and planets have influence over certain countries. That's fine. I just kind of looking at the chart in general. So Mars and Mercury together conjoined, that's a naughty Mercury. a masculine, possibly mean Mercury. But then we look at the other aspects. You have Saturn and Jupiter trining Mercury and Mars together. So if you take all of that into account, right, that's Mercury is being affected by, well, the greater malefic over here, the lesser malefic Mars, and then the greater benefic. So like if you're just playing a math game, there are currently more malefic things affecting and impacting Mercury than there are benefic. So if this were someone's chart, right, their Mercury, one might say, might be in trouble. But again, we have trines, which are very, very good. So really, Saturn trining Mercury isn't a bad thing at all. Saturn opposite Mercury can definitely make your Mercury, how would I put this? It does present challenges to your communication, but it also sharpens the mind. Saturnian aspects, especially after age 30, they change a lot after your Saturn return, in my opinion. Where in the first 30 years, a Saturn aspect might present a challenge, but after your Saturn return, you've hopefully learned from those challenges, and that Saturn aspect may prove to be a huge boon, because that is true. That's what's said about Saturn opposite Mercury, is that it'll start with difficulties, but eventually, this was Guido Bonatti said this, hundreds of years ago. He said, over time, Saturn will sharpen the mind. So, I mean, if this were somebody's chart right now, this is incredible willpower, because Mars really, more than anything, represents your willpower. Whether you're male or female, Mars is your force of will. So having that to be trined by Saturn and Jupiter is actually pretty incredible, right? So like if this were somebody's chart, that's one thing. But on like a day-to-day thing, for the most part, things are good. But that Mars conjunct Mercury will occasionally flare up and cause some tough communication. Yo, Saturn Rooster. Mate, I got Mars and Mercury in Gemini, Saturn in Libra, and Sun in Gemini. Dang, dude, you got a Gemini stellium just like me. Let's go. So you got, okay, so you got Mars, Mercury, and the Sun in Gemini. Saturn and Libra trining them, hopefully. Amazing we both wing it and not write a script for videos. Yeah, bro. I mean, my videos are pretty scripted. My lives are absolutely not. I had some notes written down for this live, but I left that book and those notes in my bedroom. Like, I woke up at like, I was taking a nap for the last few hours, and I woke up at like 8:04, planning to go live at 8 o'clock. So I was like, oh gosh, I wake up, check on my cats, and then just run in here and try and be like, oh gosh, what was I doing? Oh, it's a full moon. Okay, third house, good. Taurus, good. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Happy says he has a North Node in Gemini with Saturn in Gemini. So the North Node is interesting, and I am of the camp that the nodes don't aspect any planets in the nativity besides maybe the moon. The north nodes are not physical. They're physical places in the sky, and they're very, very real and powerful, but they aren't aspecting other planets. That's why some people think, like, oh, planets aspecting the ascendant. I'm still making up my mind on that. I wish I could say yes, because my Jupiter trines my ascendant perfectly. But, if there's nothing there, if there's no planet on the ascendant, you're just trining the sine wave, and that's just something to be careful for. Geminian spontaneity. Oh yeah, dude. Geminis, man, we are spontaneous, quick, all over the place. Longo, this last weekend when we were talking, he likened Geminis to the golden snitch from Harry Potter, which is completely apropos. in my opinion. No, very much all over the place. So yeah, dude, that makes sense, Adam Rooster, that you got a lot of Gemini, man. That's why we vibe, bro. And then you have Saturn in Libra, dude. Oh man, I could say so much about Saturn and Libra. Saturn is Libra's exaltation. Obviously, everyone knows that. But the fact that Saturn exalts in Libra, in my opinion, is why people conflate Saturn with Lucifer. Satan and Lucifer. Satan and Lucifer are not the same. If we want to be very, very technical, Lucifer is Venus when Venus rises above the sun, which typically will happen after Venus gets done retrogressing, right? Because right now the sun is in Scorpio. A while ago, this was actually during March this year, Venus was retrogressing from, the the western side of the sun to the eastern side of the sun. Right now, if you look in the sky, when you see Venus or you see the sun, Venus is east of the sun. So right now, Venus, like this chart later, these planets are going to travel this way, and then they'll be rising on the eastern horizon right here. So Venus is going to rise before the sun. And Venus is the third brightest heavenly body. The sun is the brightest, and then the moon, and then you've got Venus. So when Venus heralds the sun, Venus is the light bringer, because just like Mercury, Venus will never travel too far from the sun. So when Venus is that about, I think it's like 48, 45-ish degrees away from the sun, right? You'll see the light of Venus. Venus is so bright in the sky that it can cast a shadow if it's the only heavenly body up there. And then, Venus heralds the sun. Venus is the light bringer, which is why Lucifer, Lucy means light in Latin, so Lucifer is the light bringer. But going back to Saturn and Libra, right? So Saturn exalts in Libra, and then Venus rules Libra. So both of those things are why both are associated with the fall. Saturn tempts Eve in the Garden of Eden to eat that apple. And that's all just heavy fall symbolism. Heavy, heavy fall symbolism, which is why those two, Satan and Lucifer, get conflated. Because when Eve eats from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, well, she sees the light, doesn't she? She realizes, oh my gosh, we're naked. Oh my gosh. All these different things come to light. So, there's a lot of reasons Saturn exalts in Libra. That's one of them. Saturn is also opposite the sun. I cannot wait to drop my videos on why Saturn is the outermost planet. So Saturn's domiciles of, I went over this before, Aquarius and Cap, are opposite Cancer and Leo for the sun and moon. So when the sun falls in Libra, well, the sun turns off, Saturn turns on. And the same thing is true for Aries, Saturn turns off in Aries, and the sun turns right on. The sun exalts, Saturn falls. So Saturn exalts in Libra because it's literally meant to be a mechanical, astrology, our human understanding of astrology is just our best guess at trying to understand God's intelligent design. And I definitely look at Saturn and the sun as mechanical opposites. So, in Libra, the sun turns off, Saturn turns on, Venus rules Libra, and Saturn exalts in Libra. And even thinking about just the fruit, the apple, or I know Longo likes going with the the orange as the fruit, that's also fine too. And what's interesting about oranges and apples, they're both harvested. They both begin harvesting in Libra season. So it doesn't matter what fruit you think is the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You know, the golden apple could be an orange or a literal apple. Either one's fine because they're both harvested in Libra. But if a apple is not picked from a tree, it will literally fall to the ground. You know, in fall, we love eating apples. You know, apples are in season. Do you believe the apple could be pleasure only, like real life pleasure? I mean, it certainly is emblematic and symbolic of that, you know. Fruit tastes good, you know, fruit is a great earthly pleasure, which is one of the many reasons why I'm vegetarian. You know, fruit just tastes so good, you know, fruit is so naturally enticing. So yeah, fruit, I don't think fruit can be pleasure only or an apple can be pleasure only. Um because it's so deeply connected. You know, like if the ancient Roman gods are having a feast, they're surrounded by fruit. You know, the cornucopia is overflowing with fruit. So I do think there is a lot of divinity and spirituality associated with fruit. So I don't think it's just pleasure, my humble opinion. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry, that was all over the place. But yeah, Venus ruling Libra, Saturn being there like Saturn and Venus are both so heavily connected with Libra, which is why people conflate, you know, Satan and Lucifer. And I am neither a Satanist nor a Luciferian, but, you know, in somewhat of a defense of Lucifer, Lucifer is just the light bringer. It's just Venus. Lucifer is female. Lucifer is not male. Um, so we have a Lucifer Saturn, right? Or Lucifer Venus right now. Like if the sun were in Virgo right now and Venus were in Libra, that would be I think that's called vespertine or matutine. There are two words for Venus. I think matutine, it'd be matutine. And then vespertine, I think, is when Venus rises before the sun. And Venus is mature and needs to retrogress to become new again. So it passes that way. That's kind of how I remember that. But yeah, so we have a Luciferian Venus right now because Venus is rising before the sun and it's being squared by Jupiter. So you may see impediments to love, you may see impediments to beauty. And again, talking about mundane astrology, I kind of meant to have some videos to pull up, but I don't have them right now. But like, what's going on in the world? You know, people are acting real ugly. You know, the whole EBT thing, man, as I think the most significant thing with this Taurus full moon, I'm pretty sure they definitely timed the EBT, the benefits. If you don't know what EBT is, in America, it's just, you know, government assistance for food, and that has been taken away due to a government shutdown, which government shutdown, man, is so funny because they happen all the time. They've never gone on this long. It's never been too affective like this one has. But whenever a government shutdown happens, the left blames the right and the right blames the left. You know, it's literally like, oh, it's the Democrats' fault, says the Republican. It's the Republicans' fault, says the Democrat. But you know, it's just so funny how both sides can blame each other, and no matter which side you're entrenched in, you're like, yeah, the other team sucks, you know? That's definitely a red shift, blue shift polarity that, in my opinion, is very, very good to exit. You know, you don't want to be, you know, live your life, but in my humble opinion, it is very bad to be polarized. And man, politics is so polarizing. But so right now, you know, a lot of people lost assistance to food. And just me personally, I happen to know a lot of people who rely on food stamps. You know, I live in a part of the country where a good portion of the people, require government assistance for better or worse. Do I think it is for worse overall? Yes. I'm super aware that people are abusing EBT and food stamps and government assistance, and that does disgust me. But on the other end of the coin, right? Some people really, really need and rely on that food and are genuinely not scamming the government, for just how awful modern society is. Not that I'm not grateful for life, thank you God, but that we do live in a bit of a topsy-turvy, up-down world that has been perverted by these so-called powers that wish they be. And people are really reliant on government assistance, and I do think that they timed it with this Taurus full moon, because if I had to pick one sign in the zodiac that is associated with eating, it's definitely Taurus, because Taurus rules the throat and the lower mouth, the jaw. So it's all of the functions of literally chewing and eating food, right? If you describe someone as bovine or cow-like, what do you think? If you think of like someone like chewing gum or like chewing with their mouth almost open, really rocking that jaw back and forth, so you say, hey, stop being so bovine, stop being so cow-like. So yeah, that the food drama that's going on, I mean, there may be some lunatic behavior that you'll see regarding the full moon. I know there are a lot of videos going around of, people going, oh, we're just gonna walk out and steal the food. I've not seen that in real life personally. So like, I try not to get agitated by things I just see on the internet. I really try and go by my own lived experience. But yeah, the current food situation is wild. But I don't know, like for me today, I personally had a great day today. I was expecting some lunacy. I expected I hit a little bit of it, but the moon is receiving so many positive aspects right now. Like it's being sextiled by Jupiter and Saturn, so the two outermost planets, the two graders, are lending a lot of good energy and good triangulation to the moon right now. So the mood is very stable. My mood's been good all day. I've been in a very, very good mood all day, as have most of the people I've encountered. And again, that just goes back to Taurus in general and why the moon exalts there so much. Because um the moon is so swift, like your moods can change so suddenly. Taurus really grounds with its earthy nature. It grounds you and gives your mood, that sense of beauty. And I experienced, and I'm grateful to have experienced a lot of beauty today. Merlin, is there a book you recommend to learn more about the connection between the planets and Bible stories? That is a great question. There is a book called The Celestial Code of Scripture. I'm not gonna pull up my personal Amazon account, but let me type it out for you right here. It's I forget who it's by. The Celestial Code of Scripture. Now, this doesn't go over the relationship between the planets necessarily, but the Celestial Code of Scripture talks about the stars in the sky and their relation to many, not just the Bible, but the mystical, religious, and spiritual traditions of many cultures. Um, Mostly like the Native Americans and um that kind of thing. It goes over the Bible. It goes over, no, it goes over the Bible huge actually. It's huge on the Bible. It goes over how Noah's Ark is related to the Ark in Cancer. That's why again, there was the flood up there. So I really highly recommend the Celestial Code of Scripture. It is such a good book for just understanding the connection between the stars and the heavenly bodies. I very much consider myself an astrotheologian more than anything. You know, most Christians probably, like especially church-going Christians, would not vibe with my takes on the Bible too much because I do think it is mostly allegory based off of the stars. You know, I'm not going to go out here and directly refute um the existence of a biblical Jesus. I think though my favorite Bible verse is Luke 6:46, where these people go up to Jesus and they say, Lord, Lord, Lord. And Jesus says to them, why do you call me Lord and not do what I do? You know, my humble opinion, this is just how I try and live, is like, Jesus never asked anyone to worship him, but he did say, hey, my lessons are really impactful. Please do what I do. I don't, you know, and he says, you know, why do you call me good? Only God is good. And I love that. You know, I do know good. Any good I do is a conduit for God, the source, the creator, the one. You know, my humble opinion with that. Not trying to offend anybody. I don't want to get into it too deep. But that's just my opinion. But the celestial code of scripture is so good. It's so detailed. Um, it really goes deep on all these different biblical myths and how they relate to, you know, the stars in the sky. It's just absolutely beautiful. I really love it. And that's why, and I appreciate everyone being here, man. It's so cool having an active chat, man. Like that's why I got into astrology. It's like when you look at the heavens, in my humble opinion, you're peering into God's intelligent design. And man, oh man, is the design so intelligent. You know, Saturn Rooster is, in my opinion, the foremost living authority on Saturn right now. Like what Saturn Rooster is doing just by understanding the synodic cycle of Saturn and how that relates to so many things that the ancient mystery cultures and the mystery schools put so much incredible effort into leaving here for us to study is incredible, man. And like, not to toot my own horn, but like the video that Longo blew up my channel with, and Spice Bear first saw and Saturn Rooster saw, you know, which I appreciate everybody, man. Um, was my video on planetary retrogression. You know, I'm not trying to have too much of an ego, but like I do think that I understand planetary retrogression, at least why they retrogress, better than any living person right now. I'm sorry if that's egotistical, but like we're living in a time where like when we realize, okay, we've all been indoctrinated in this spinning space ball nonsense, when you start understanding the geocentric planar of reality, things do have to get sussed out and they have to get proved. And like what I did with retrogression was I proved why they retrogress. If you see the patterns of why these planets retrogress, as an astrologer, you can't possibly say that retrogression is illusory, you know? I think my favorite working astrologer is Adam Ellenboss of Nightlight Astrology. He's great. He's pretty much a straight up Hellenistic astrologer. He's awesome. But like even him, I was watching a video on Mercury retrograde or something like that, and he's like, yeah, guys, you know, Mercury, you know, retrograde, even though it's really an illusion, it looks like it's really happening, so it affects us. And I just want to be like, bro, like, I think if every astrologer really knew that, like, what you're seeing in the sky is not that far away, and if they knew how Ken Wheeler describes light as a perturbation of the ether, like, I'm not the world's greatest astrologer. I just happen to be a guy who knows what shape the earth is and loves astrology, and then I figured some stuff out. Like, I literally was just having a rough couple of months, and I prayed to God for guidance and wisdom. And over the course of the next week, literally, thank you, God, I discovered those retrogression patterns. You know, like I'm nothing special. Literally, all glory to God. I didn't do anything. All I did was discover what was already there. But as we see these heavenly bodies, you know, we learn about God's intelligent design, which is just mind blowing because you can take it so deep on so many levels. That's why how like, you know, when I was bouncing around before talking about all these different planets and these different signs and aspects, that stuff's just scratching the surface. Like we could go so much deeper on any one of those planets, any one of those signs, any one of these aspects these planets are making, and you know, go real deep. Thank you, Quite Bright. I genuinely, sincerely appreciate that. Yeah, bro. Oh, you completed his 4 years of his course? That's awesome, Quite Bright. I wish I had the money and time to take his course, bro. Adam Ellenboss is such a good astrologer. And, you know, he doesn't need my help, but like, if Adam Ellenboss like literally knew like the nature of reality, bro, like again, not that sounds very egotistical of me, but it's like, you know, we're not on a spinning ball. And the more people wake up to that, you know, like when you stop believing lies, you start looking for truth, you know? Saturn is the ancients' most important wandering star. Agreed, man. Like, and that's why it's so funny, you know, people have this hatred for Saturn and Satan. And like, God allows Satan to exist. You know, Satan and God are not equals. You know, God put Satan here for a reason to test us and to tempt us, in my humble opinion. You know, so like Satan serves a purpose, God serves a purpose. You know, our goal is to reject and overcome Satan and Saturn and try to be more like Jesus, or however you want to look at that, you know, mythological figure, but these brilliant examples that have come before us and are leaving all these messages like Saturn Rooster, bro. Like you're going back and you're looking at the old master's work and you're literally doing the mathematics. And yeah, I mean, again, when I drop Saturn Rooster's name all the time, I'm not glazing. I'm just giving credit where credit is due, dude. Like, it's literally great shit, you know? Like, I love Longo's channel for what he does. I love Spice Bear's channel for what she does, you know? And I love Saturn Rooster's channel for what he does. And that's just different people looking at God's intelligent design in different ways, you know? Longo talking about the Garden of Eden and what that means is really cool stuff. God is answering our questions from the heart. Saturn Rooster, I could not agree with that more. And that's why I'm so grateful, dude. Like literally everything I ask for, God is giving me. And like sometimes I feel like I don't deserve it. I'm just so grateful that like, you know, what I wanted most in life is to like get answers. And man, have I received some answers over the past few years, man. Like, you know, my this like my whole journey down this rabbit hole kind of started you know, my stepdad, who was a father. I was very lucky. My stepdad and my dad were and are both very active in my life, but like my stepdad passed away from the jabby jab a few years back, and like it kind of sent me spiraling for a while. But you know, somehow that spiral led me to this truth. And just, you know, in my opinion, like when you look at the nature of reality, right? Like, I don't think there's a way, like, knowing what you know about the intelligent design of the heavens, Saturn Rooster, and like God's intelligent design of Saturn, how could we possibly deny that there is intelligent design or a creator, you know? And that's what I think all this info is. It's like literally proof of the creator. And like again, there's a bill you can look at flowers and see proof of the creator, right? But like looking at the heavens and truly understanding it is incredible insight into God's intelligent design. I'm sorry I keep saying that so much, but like that's why I love astrology so much, and that's why I find it to be so true, because it's beautiful when you understand it. Amanita says, if everything were perfect, the good things we do wouldn't matter. Yeah, there's good and bad. Absolutely. Like there's beauty in the breakdown. That's true in so many different ways. Like, and that's like that goes back to Shakespeare's Seven Ages of Man, right? You go from the infant to the child to the lover to the adult to the older adult to the late aged adult and then to death. So like, even our cycle and circle of life, and that death, you have your second childhood, right? Like who needs diapers? Old people at stage 7 and babies at stage 1, right? This is called second childishness. Before you die, you have your second childishness, and you revert back to being a little baby. If you've lived a good life, I think old people tend to be quite happy and whimsical. Not that I welcome death, and not that I don't fear death, but like knowing what I know now, I'm pretty sure something comes after. What I loved. Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, dude, my dad, uh, do I share this story? I kind of sometimes don't like talking about this publicly because like my brothers disagree. Like they don't think the jab got him, but I do personally. Um, and then my mom, who is too young to be a widow, literally doesn't deserve it. Such a good person. My stepdad, I called him dad, I grew up with him. Such a good person. But yeah, like literally, um, my dad wasn't in hospice. He lived at home, you know, uh, with my mom until the night he passed. And I got a phone call from my mom, and she says, Merlin, uh, dad's going to hospice. And I just lost it because I'm like, man, if he's going to hospice, it's not good. And like, I had to let her go. We hung up after a bit. We talked for a bit. I was like, "Are you okay? If I could do anything, let me know." I don't live near them, so I couldn't visit. And I was just on the couch. My now ex-wife, she wasn't home yet, and I was just by myself. It was around this time at night, a little bit earlier, and I'm literally just like, I cried so hard because like I don't know why. I just knew he was gonna pass that night. I just knew it. And like it's like we're like as it was happening, I knew it. And when that happened, like I received two things. Like it's not like I don't want to say like God talked to me, but like I could say that the Holy Spirit talked to me. And I received two messages, really two things. And those two things were he's okay. Like he's like that was the first thing was like it was so weird. Like it was like as my grief and my sorrow and my anguish hit the apex, like I couldn't weep any harder. I couldn't be any more sorrowful. I was so mad at all the lies around the boop boop and the vid and all this crap, and that my mom had to put up with it, that my mom in her early 50s is going to become a widow and lose the love of her life. And it's like, like we're all losing him. It was just all hitting a focal point. And then like as it hit its apex, a wave of serenity literally washed over me. And I just received the message like it wasn't like I'm okay, but it was like I'm okay. I guess it was his spirit somehow. I don't know, whatever. But it was like he's okay, and then communication. And I don't know if that means communication is the purpose of life for me or for everybody, but at least for me, I realized then that to communicate was the purpose of life, because that's what I love more than anything. Like, going back to astrology, like my Gemini nature, like I love to communicate. It's literally my favorite thing to do. Like, to me, there's nothing more satisfying than saying something and having someone else truly, truly get it. Or if someone else tells me something, like when I see like a video from another person that I really vibe with, and like it's some deep gravy, that is like the best thing in life, is that communication. So like, yeah, I kind of got that. So yeah, like I got that from the loss of my stepdad. Um, and then I went down this whole, spiritual awakening slash journey, blah blah blah. So, yeah, sorry that was like a rant and that may have been too personal. I'm sorry, but like, whatever. I felt compelled. And again, that's the, yeah, we'll see. Um, so yeah. Yeah, what you said, hopefully he's past is cheering me on over the veil. I think so, man. Is there any risk at sharing your birth chart specifically for people who wants to control you? Some people do think so. Sharing your birth chart, allegedly can open you up to black magic potentially. I'm pretty open with sharing my birth chart because like I like to think, I don't know, even when I was like younger and I was more agnostic, like, when I thought I was on a spinning space ball, right? I didn't I always believed in God, but I always thought, man, why would God create something that he would just destroy with a meteor? That doesn't make any sense. And I was just like, what is space expanding into? So I was very much agnostic. Like I knew God existed, but I couldn't prove it. Like I was like, But now it's like, oh, God exists, Psalms 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Quite literally. Thank you for the kind words, Adam Rooster. He really did, man. Like both my dad and my stepdad, I'm so grateful because they're so different. But like, some people have no dad and no father figure. I had two incredible father figures who were with me my whole life. So like, I'm so lucky and so grateful that I was so provided for. Can I see the link? I can't see a link, I'm sorry. Communication is the greatest thing. I agree. Like literally, there's there's this communication's it, like that's why if there's a video of a content creator we like, we feel compelled to comment. This is why sometimes the comments are better than the video itself, right? This is why having like, chat in a live stream can be so great. Like it's not a one man show. And like, my personal belief, like we're all in here together forever. I don't really believe in death anymore. Ken Wheeler, I love when he says, what makes you think you are that which dies? Beautiful, man. Like literally beautiful. Like, what are you? Oh, this is my arm. Okay, well, I am not my arm. My arm is of me. This is my head. I am not my head. My head is of me. This is not my body. Okay, my body is not me, so what am I? You know? I think we're souls, personally. If I had to be like, what am I would answer either I am that I am, because that answer was good enough for God, therefore it's good enough for me, or it's I am a soul. And man, I really don't think this is the end. I think this is just the beginning. And I just the amount of information and love for creation and love for God and love for my fellow man that I'm seeing with like everything going on in the quote unquote truther movement, but more so the esoteric truther movement, is nothing short of incredible. I'm no longer on Twitter. I used to be for a bit, but got off it for various reasons. But I had some great friends on Twitter, man, that I loved hanging out with. But yeah, that's a story for another day. Invites Spontaneity of thought for me, live chats. Yeah, dude, like it's less boring. Like if I had like some video here, it would like it's so funny like when I hear myself on video because it's like it's not my natural communication style. Like I'm not meant to be super like rigid, but I do edit my videos to be very rigid. I'm a very all over the place Gemini person. I'm curious, Saturn Rooster, what your stellium looks like. Like my Gemini, my sun is in the 25th degree. That's a terrible sun. Let's lighten this thing a little bit and let's make it red so we can see it. My sun is in the 25th degree of Gemini, and then my Venus and Mercury are chilling together on the same exact degree, the 20th degree of Gemini. So like within 5 degrees, I've got the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. So like my Gemini is super, super strong, right? Like, and that's in my opinion, like another flaw of like modern astrology, because people be like, oh, I have Pluto, Jupiter, you know, Charon, or like two of the asteroids in one sign. Oh, I've got a stellium, and it's like my brother in Christ, that is not a stellium. I'm sorry, you know, like I think stelliums. My personal take on it, it's not 4 planets because I only work with the inner seven. So I think 3 planets, and again, maybe I'm biased this way, but I think 3 planets is a stellium. And if it's 3 strong planets in the same sign, you got yourself a stellium. My humble opinion. But if you have your own opinions, you know, don't let me influence you on your chart reading, you know. And that's what's funny, man. Like every astrologer, there's no chart you know better than your own. Like every astrologer loves studying their own chart, which is why I recommend having astrologers get their chart read by other astrologers as often as you can. Just because it's always refreshing to see a different take on, you know, what you think you are. It's always fun. Everyone loves having their chart read. Everyone loves hearing about themselves, which is why astrology is so freaking cool. Um, I want to scroll back up in the chat. I forgot who it was that took Adam Ellenboss's course. Yeah, quite right, dude. That's honestly awesome. Like literally, Adam Ellenboss is great. I think Chris Brennan is great too, man. Chris Brennan is the dude who runs the astrology podcast. He is, in my opinion, a great, very talented astrologer. But like a bit of what Longo and I are trying to do with the casting couch is give astrology more of an edge. And I'm not trying to diss Chris Brennan too much, but I'm pretty sure, not that I'm right leaning, but like I'm pretty sure Chris Brennan is like a Kamala, you know, Hillary voter slash supporter. And like I think that influence does come out in his podcast. So like, you know, Longo and I are trying to do a little bit more of like a counter to that kind of thing. And like even Adam Ellenboss, like I genuinely love the dude. I'm not trying to diss Adam Ellenboss at all, but the overall take comes off a bit more left leaning. Not like that's a bad, you know, whatever, like, but like, you know, I don't think astrology is meant to be whatever. I'll just not say that. But yeah, Adam Ellenboss is great. He does great things with his astrology. And like again, like who am I to wish somebody else quote unquote knows what the true shape of the earth is? You know, like we're all on our own journey. We are all you know, doing our own thing. So like everything in its own time, you know, everything, trust God's timing, trust God's plan. I haven't taken any of Chris's courses. Sorry. I found his teaching style appealing. Yeah, Chris Brennan's great, man. Like when it comes to astrological knowledge, I mean, he literally wrote the book on Hellenistic astrology, so huge props to Chris Brennan. And yeah, dude, Adam's style is super appealing. Like Adam is such a good teacher, you know? And it's been really fun going back and watching his videos over the years. He went from like a Chut Yababa, you know, that more like, you know, Eastern, you know, mystical persona to now just being his true self, which is just awesome, you know. His videos are crushing. But like again, like both Adam and Chris would call, when planets retrograde, they'll call it illusory. And it blows my mind that astrologers can know so much about astrology, but then they look at retrograde and be like, oh yeah, it's just an illusion, bro. It's not really happening. It's like so offensive to just like my understanding of it, bro. Cause like you can't call it an illusion. It's just so not. That's why like I'm gonna be going on a crusade against the outer planets. The outer planets aren't there. So like, Robert Phoenix is another good dude, good astrologer. But like, dude, every time I watch Robert Phoenix, he's talking about Pluto. And like, I'll tell you guys right now, like I'll pull up my book in a minute. I haven't told anybody on the chat yet, or like my videos, like Longo knows. But like I wrote a book, like before I started making videos, I wrote a book on, you know, kind of fixing the misconceptions of geo or heliocentric astrology. So like right now I'm polishing up that book. I'm going to give it out for free because if Eric Dubé can give out his stuff for free, I can certainly give out my stuff for free. Like I'm not exactly hurting for money, you know? Like I might eventually sell hard copies, but I'm at least going to give out the electronic copies for free. Just because like God gave me the knowledge about retrogression. You know what I mean? I literally prayed to God and then learned that. So that's not me. So, that's like my tithe. I want to give that to the people. So that's why I started making these videos. So like, I can get that message out there that like, it's all about intelligent design. Like it's all about God is super real. And again, people come to their realization that God is real in many different ways. But if the illusion of the spinning space ball really gets crashed and cracked and destroyed, and people really do understand that, we live in the center of the universe, or, we are the center of creation, that would change a lot of. I can check your chart in a bit, happy. I can pull it up in a bit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep ignoring that, but I'm probably not going to pull up any charts this stream. But what I like to do is kind of have my stuff pulled up ahead of time. But what I want to do real quick, I'm going to pull up ChatGPT if I can, and just talk about the Copernican principle for 1 second. So let me just pull this up real quick. Let's go over to ChatGPT. I'll make sure no info is shown. Blah, blah, blah. Stay logged out. Okay. We will bookmarks toolbar. All right. So let's just have some fun with ChatGPT real quick, right? So let me say, I'll say to ChatGPT, please explain the Copernican principle. Be concise. Now, okay, so we got ChatGPT. I hope you guys can see it. I'm going to go read through it. So the Copernican principle states that Earth and its inhabitants do not occupy a special or privileged position in the universe. In other words, the laws of physics and the general conditions of the universe are the same everywhere, and our place in it is not unique. Interesting. Now I'm going to ask, doesn't the Copernican, oh my gosh, why am I misspelling that? Copernican principle essentially state that even though all observations from Earth look like everything is revolving around us, the assumption is made that anywhere in the universe looks like the center of the universe. Please answer in 1 sentence. And I said that very poorly, but it'll get the point across. Yes, the Copernican principle implies that although observations from Earth make it seem like everything revolves around us, any observer anywhere in the universe would see themselves as being at the center in the same way. Okay, so now we'll go. So all observations from Earth, let's see, what's that imply? Reach the conclusion? Suggest that we are the center of the universe. Right? Please answer in one word. Yes. There we go, dude. So like the Copernican principle, it's like we're literally being taught a religion. It's like even if everything looks like we're the center of the universe, the insane conclusion is reached that, oh yeah, well, I guess just everywhere in the universe looks like the center of the universe. That's fucking crazy, man, and that's cruel. And that is like what I'm so against. Like, if people understood that, like, dude, like, we literally observe everything revolving around us, the only proof that we are not the center of the universe is like NASA saying, yeah, trust me, bro, we're not the center of the universe. Everyone's the center of the universe. Here, look at these images. It's like, dude, like, understanding, again, like, I wouldn't say you have to be a Christian or like anything, but like, it'd be pretty hard to deny God's existence if you knew the nature of the plane, even semi-intelligently. But they literally do their best to make everybody retarded, you know? And I love pointing out the moon. The moon is the simplest object in the night sky. The moon is the most consistent. Amanita, yes. They want us to not value ourselves or see God's hand in our lives. That is it. That is exactly it. Like, literally, you, dear listener, are the most important person in the world, as am I, as is everybody. Literally, God loves us all equally. Now, do we all love God equally? No. And I'm not a special boy just because I love God. But, like, you know, God put us all here for a reason. And the spinning space ball just destroys us, man. Like, think about what's happened in the past, like, 100 years since, and dude, if you're a truther and you've not read, Ayn Rand's, I know people, like, kind of meme on Ayn Rand a lot, but Ayn Rand, Anthem, it's a very short book. Anthem by Ayn Rand is incredible, like, for so many different reasons. But it does have a lot of geocentric plain Earth gravy. But where was I going? I totally just blanked. I'm sorry. But Anthem is an incredible truther book, my humble opinion. Um, but yeah, like, literally think about what happened over the past one. Oh, that book came out like 100 years ago. That's why I pointed that out. And it's like very much like the debate was raging at that time over the shape of the Earth 100 years ago. Um, Yeah, it, like, I do think, like, it's a war on God, truly. Like, they want us to not realize the intelligent design, the divinity within ourselves, you know? God made us um be, you know, half animal and half God. We are literally halfway between God and an animal. And it's up to us, right? Do we succumb to that lower nature? That's the 666 or the sex, or our bestial nature, right? That's the lower mind. 666, not to get too much into numerology again, like my other video, but, like, you know, 666 reduces to 9. So 666 is the lower mind. Whereas if you're a 999, that's the upper mind, right? That also reduces to 9. So that's the upper mind, you know, again, 432, all that good shit, all reduces to 9. So yeah, like, I do think it's genuinely a war on God. Like, literally God's intelligent design, like our divinity, because what's happened since the you know, the inception of NASA and like the force-fed indoctrination of heliocentrism, The family unit has been destroyed completely. The divorce rate is through the roof. Um, Atheism has skyrocketed. Drug use, despair, all of these things. And right, that's one of like people's favorite question when it comes to, like, oh, the shape of the earth. Like, why would they lie? Why would they lie about the shape of the earth? It's like, well, what's happened since then is complete despair and misery, societal breakdown. People are allowing themselves to be stepped on by the state. They've made us they've tried to make us essentially retarded. It's so true. Like language, if you read the Bible, in my humble opinion, you got to read the King James version. My humble opinion, because like these newer translations, they've taken so much out, they've altered so much language, and literacy rates have plummeted through the floor, while the consumption of horrific stuff like rap music, again, not to be too much of a fucking boomer, but like modern rap, dude, is crazy. The earth is round. You can. Yeah, happy. I'm not gonna debate shape of the earth on the stream, man. Like it's not even a debate. It's all good. I don't take the Bible as the truth of why the earth is a plane. I came to the understanding that we live on a plane before I gained an appreciation for the Bible, you know? Um if you can look at boats coming back into view as you zoom in on them when they go over the horizon and not be like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know what to say. Like we 100% live on a plane. There's infinite ways to prove it. I'm sorry, but like if you haven't learned that yet, I would highly recommend just buckling up and watching Eric Dubé's 200 Proofs We Are Not Living on a Spinning Globe. Um, if you can get through that and not be like, I I'm at a loss, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything. That's just my opinion, but I'm not going to debate it too much. This whole stream wasn't meant to be like a yeah, but airplanes have curved windows, man. So like a curved window will curve the horizon. And then also here, like why am I getting into this? But whatever. Give me one sec. I got you. Neil deGrasse Tyson. All right, so here we go.
And that dude who jumped out of a perfectly good balloon, what's his name? Felix Baumgartner. He would have been about 2 millimeters above the surface of this globe. That's his edge of space jump. Now, I don't. It's fine. He wants to. I don't have a problem if he does it, but the honesty of it would greatly diminish what I think people thought he was actually doing. And not only that, they made sure to photograph him standing there with a really wide-angle lens, which curves horizontal lines. Right. So in the photo, you see this curvature of Earth's surface, and he said, "Wow, he's in space. Look at that." No, he's not. At that height, you don't see the curvature of the Earth if you are 2 millimeters above this beach ball.
So, Neil deGrasse Tyson had to run cover, and like, bro, it's all good. Like, man, I don't know how you can have respect for my work, like, and my work is so obviously geocentric and planar. I don't see how you could watch a single one of my videos and not realize how I felt about the shape of the earth. I do say it in code pretty much, but I say it very, very apparently how I feel about that, man. So like, God bless you, do you. But yeah, it's all good. Let's see. All right. But yeah, it ain't even close. All right. So yeah, back to Amanita's comment. I think they just want us to not value ourselves or see God's hand in our lives. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. It's a war on God. I'm sorry, this stream went off the rails. I didn't really mean for it to with like this. Neil disgraced Tyson chicken wings. Yeah. Yeah, Neil is quite the character, and he is an obese meat eater, you know. So again, how much can you trust him? About as far as you can throw him, which is not very far. So yeah, you know, the where am I right here? The geocentric planar nature of our reality is super apparent and super important. You know, again, everyone believe what you want to believe. I'm not gonna go on crusades over it. I'm pretty much over that. But yeah, you know, the debate ain't even close. Yeah, and Dr. Longo in the chat, bro. Dude, Dr. Longo, Spice Bear, and Saturn Rooster all stopped by, which I sincerely appreciate. Like, literally, Spice Bear was the first person to check out my content. The only reason my channel has any amount of subs is because Longo shouted it out on his channel. Thank you, Longo. I am forever grateful. And then Saturn Rooster, bro, you've inspired most of my last videos because, you know, like your work on Saturn, man, has been nothing short of incredible. So, Neil on deGrasse Tyson. Yep. So, oh, this has been going for like an hour and a half. I'm gonna wrap it up soon, probably. But I don't know. I didn't really mean to go off on the whole shape thing, guys. But like, when someone says like, "Oh, you're stupid for thinking that," you know, you can call me a lot of things. Like, I am a lot of things. I can be rude. I can be a jerk. But I'm not that dumb. So. I've at least, you know, I'm pretty freaking fugly for sure, but I'm not that dumb, you know? So, yeah, full moon in Taurus, you know, we got some, again, that was a little, you know, a little bit of bull crap to deal with, a little bit of bull crap. But for the most part, Taurus is excellent for the nature of the moon, you know? The moon is the heavenly body. Dude, Amanita, the venom from the globe side is rather disturbing. Yeah. I was gang stalked by anti-plane earthers. So like, dude, they're nuts, man. And now I'm just over it. Like that's the thing about gang stalking, which is really just like, you know, targeted bullying from many different people. Um, you know, it's almost a choice. Like when you stop giving a fuck, they lose power. So if you're being harassed by the globe side or anybody, block as much as you can and then say fuck it and pray. I don't know, I did a lot of praying to God and realized everything's gonna be okay no matter what, so it's all good, you know. So yeah, it is very disturbing though. It's weird, and it's from like genuinely childish people. Quite bright. Thank you for being here. Like, you know, your comments have been insightful. I love that there's another Adam Ellenboss fan in the chat. You know, shout out to Adam. You know, Nightlight Astrology, great stuff. You know, he uses the outer planets. He's not a geocentric plane earther, but when it comes to astrological knowledge, Adam absolutely crushes. Um, but yeah, dude, like the other side, whatever. I'm not gonna shit talk him. I've decided I'm gonna try and run this channel not trashing and shit talking other people. You know, like truly, I just want to do my own thing and have some fun with astrology. So that's the plan for this channel. And yeah, dude, like when Longo, I'm sorry, Longo, during our stream, you asked me, you were like, yeah, tell the chat about your channel. And then I went off on a freaking FE rant, basically. So my apologies there. But, you know, FE is pretty central to my philosophy of astrology. But really, my channel is more about, you know, understanding the nature of our reality by looking at the heavens, you know, as above, so below. Which is why, you know, I love the Lord's Prayer because there's so much astrology in it, you know? And it's so good, man. On earth as it is in heaven. It's a beautiful thing. God put the stars there for signs and for seasons. Um, and it's just so apparent the more you see it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. The stars really are the unadulterated word of God. That's why when there was that scare, remember when everyone was like, oh my gosh, Bill Gates wants to block out the sun. Dude, God put the sun there. Nobody can ever mess with the sun. It's impossible. It's eternal. It's perfect. Its design is perfect. And that's the thing, right? They want you to think, people like Bill Gates want you to think that their power on earth can rival God's, And it's just a joke once you see it for what it is. Like, he's not gonna block out the freaking sun no matter what he did. He could put all his wealth into it. The most he would do is put a lot of dust up there, but we'd be fine. There's nothing they can do. And that's what's so beautiful, is like, God's will be done. For his is the kingdom and the power and the glory. For how long? For how long is that true? Forever and ever. Amen. I'm going to end it there, guys. I appreciate everybody hopping by on the stream. I got to go take care of my cats. I hope that you all have a wonderful night. Or if you're in Australia, have a wonderful day. Let's see. On the East Coast of the U.S., it's 10 o'clock now. If I had to guess, in Australia, what is it, 10 o'clock in the morning? 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe, over there in Aussieland? Yeah. The beginner's mind approach is best find, especially with Mercury and Sagittarius nowadays. Yeah, okay, I'm going to talk for a little bit more. Fuck it. Fuck it, we're doing it live. But yeah, Mercury and Sagittarius. Longo, I'm curious. I want to know if your Mercury is in Sag, bro. But like, Mercury and Sag, dude, is so good. Because Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, is a benefic. And Sagittarius is the teacher. It's, trying to aim toward God, right? You have your earthly, your bestial nature, and then you have your godly nature in your head. So, yeah, Mercury and Sag is a great time to study the heavens and to kind of try and connect closer to God. If you have Mercury and Sag, that's whatever. That's fantastic. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna end it. I gotta take care of the cats. All right. Thank you all for stopping by. It was honestly a very, very, very fun stream. Sorry I ranted about all sorts of stuff. God bless the Taurus full moon, and have a great day, everybody. God bless. Peace.